Hi, Crystal here. Welcome back. I wanted to share with you another dream I had. This was March 7th, 2017. Okay, in my dream, I was getting gardening stuff all ready, but when I looked around, I saw some amazing gardens producing crops already. One lady's peppers were the size of a 2-year-old kid already. I tried to talk to her to get some advice to see how I could get that kind of growth, but she seemed hesitant to talk to me. I was getting frustrated because other gardens were in full bloom already, and I was still just trying to set up my greenhouse in my backyard. I thought it was my backyard, but I guess it wasn't, because there was a bunch of other people had small gardens there too. It seemed like the only place to set up my greenhouse was on a little hillside on a slant. I couldn't figure out how to make that work. I was just kind of sad and felt like giving up. Just then someone said, "Look!" I turned around and I saw there were little plants sprouting up from the seed I had planted in containers to go into the greenhouse. I think everyone's plants were growing fast. I think mine just started late because I was too busy preparing my greenhouse. When I woke up, this dream spoke to me about the church building as being the greenhouse, the garden plots as being ministries, and the plants were people's spiritual growth. I think church buildings are good, and a lot of growth can happen in them, but let's face it, they can be high maintenance. I also just wanted to share with you my experience this year with a greenhouse. And it was an interesting one. So for one, we set it up. It wasn't an actual greenhouse. It was a white shed, like a tarp shed. But I had heard that those can work for a greenhouse. I'm like, okay, well, we have this thing. Let's set it up and see if it does anything. And so my greenhouse, for one, it was high maintenance. There was a lot of setup to do to get things ready. The other thing that I noticed is that it was so like warm and cozy in there, that no wind, not much to bother the plants or anything. So what ended up happening, the bugs started to flourish quite a lot in the greenhouse, and I was kind of disappointed, but it really it reminded me a lot about, okay, this kind of relates to the church a bit. When our church is just warm and comfortable, just comfortable seats, not really asking too much of the people that are there, like there's no persecution. You kind of get those people that kind of come in and they just kind of bug stuff, they nitpick at things, and they start kind of eating away at the growth that is in the greenhouse. There's that spiritual growth that is going on. They just kind of like poke holes in it constantly. And the other thing was, I was the only one that was doing the watering and the pollinating. Like I had to go around and like pollinate all these little tiny flowers so there would be fruit, because it's kind of useless to have a greenhouse if there's no fruit. So I just went around to every single flower, and I'm doing all the hauling of the water myself. And it kind of reminded me, like, isn't that what pastors do? Like they try so hard in their own greenhouse. They're just sometimes just one person just really trying to produce fruit in people. They're just like going around pollinating, watering, and trying to get that fruit to produce in their greenhouse. But just think about that in comparison to out in the wild, you know, the regular garden plot, I guess. You have the wind and the rain, and those things, they can wash away the bad bugs, but yet the pollinators are there. There's tons of pollinators. There's bees and all kinds of stuff, and like the wind helps. So out in the wild, that's where you get so much fruit and like less effort, a lot less effort, because you go out on the street or like do ministry, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, you know, these people are developing a lot of fruit because they are getting experience, and they're learning a lot. So that was kind of my experience with a greenhouse this year. I didn't get a whole bunch of fruit, although there was a lot of plant growth, but then a lot of bugs, and I had to deal with that. It was a bit of a mess. Yeah, so just pondering this dream again, it just really spoke to me this year, because yeah, like I really feel like we are in a time of mega growth. Mega growth is coming to the body of Christ, and you know, I don't want us to miss the boat by we're trying to figure out how to get these services set up, you know. And it seems like the bigger the church, the harder it was for them to reopen. And I'm just afraid that we're coming into a time that the churches are gonna have to be closed again, and then what? Well, every small group, there was no problem. Every large church, it was a huge problem, huge setup, lots of things to figure out. So, you know, bottom line is, I think what we can take away from this dream is that we can't be relying on the building, and we can get a lot of growth even if we don't have a building, and possibly even more. We need to have a plan B. We need to brainstorm and figure out, okay, we can't rely on these buildings. We need something more, something different. And you know, there's lots of, whether it's we can do house churches, there's other ways, but we can't just shut down, we can't shut down our churches. We have to be active somehow and just brainstorm and figure out how to do that. Yeah. So that's what I took away from my dream. I hope that helps in some way. Let's get brainstorming. Okay, see ya.